Let's talk about NATO. This powerful alliance, steeped in history and strategic importance, has been a cornerstone of global security for decades. The military alliance that's suddenly making headlines, not just for its ongoing operations and diplomatic efforts, but for opening its wallets in a significant way. We're talking about a substantial increase in financial commitments. After years of debate, sometimes heated, often complex, and involving numerous stakeholders, NATO countries are finally boosting their defense spending in a big way. We're seeing budgets expand, procurement processes accelerate, and a renewed focus on military readiness across the board. The push for this? What's been the driving force behind this sudden surge in investment? Well, one significant factor was former U.S. President Donald Trump, who loudly and repeatedly demanded that allies pay their fair share, often in very public and direct terms. For years, leaders largely shrugged off his demands, perhaps hoping the pressure would eventually subside. But now, the message has stuck. The geopolitical landscape has shifted, and the need for increased defense capabilities is being taken far more seriously. This isn't just about buying new gear, although updated equipment is certainly part of the equation. It's a major shift in how these nations see their role in global security. It's about projecting strength, deterring potential adversaries, and reaffirming their commitment to collective defense. The world is watching, with keen interest and a degree of apprehension. As NATO's new spending spree sends ripples from Moscow to Beijing, and indeed, to capitals around the globe. Why now? What are the underlying factors driving this change? Is this a good thing, a bad thing, or just an expensive one? What are the potential consequences of this increased military spending? Behind the numbers and handshakes, the official statements and carefully crafted photo opportunities, there's a story of power and pressure, of shifting alliances and evolving threats. And a 75-year-old promise being tested, a commitment to collective security that's now facing new and complex challenges. International relations isn't always about quiet diplomacy and carefully worded statements. Sometimes it's about who's willing to pay the bill and how much they're willing to spend. So grab your popcorn, settle in, and prepare to delve into the intricate world of international politics. This is one global drama you won't want to miss. The stakes are high, the players are powerful, and the consequences could be far-reaching. Let's break it all down, piece by piece, to understand the full scope of what's happening with NATO's big spending spree. Let's do a quick refresher. NATO is a 32-country alliance, a powerful coalition of nations spanning North America and Europe. It's a significant geopolitical force in today's world, and understanding its purpose and inner workings is crucial. It was formed in the aftermath of World War II, a direct response to the looming threat of the Soviet Union, to stand together against any potential aggressors and maintain peace and stability in the region. Think of it as a neighborhood watch, but on a global scale. A neighborhood watch, but with tanks, fighter jets, and a whole lot of collective defense agreements. It's a serious commitment to mutual protection. To keep this neighborhood safe, each member is supposed to spend at least 2% of their gross domestic product or GDP on defense. For decades, however, most countries treated this 2% target as more of a suggestion, a guideline, rather than a strict rule that needed to be followed. The U.S. has consistently been the big spender within NATO, shouldering a significant portion of the financial burden, footing much of the bill, and often feeling like they were carrying more than their fair share. While others focused on investing in things like healthcare for their citizens and improving public transit systems for better connectivity and sustainability. American presidents, across different administrations, have long nudged allies to increase their defense spending and pay more towards the collective security. But for a long time it was a polite, almost unspoken issue discussed in the background of larger diplomatic conversations. This created tension. The U.S. felt overburdened by the financial commitments and that other nations weren't contributing enough. While Europeans questioned the need for such high levels of military spending, especially when they had other pressing domestic priorities. The 2% target became a point of quiet disagreement, a simmering dispute that threatened to undermine the alliance's unity. All it needed was someone to come along and turn that quiet debate, that underlying tension, into a full-blown public argument. Enter the disruptor, someone who wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. Suddenly, the money question, the issue of defense spending, was thrust front and center, dominating headlines and sparking intense debate. And everything changed. The dynamics of the alliance shifted, and the future of NATO was thrown into uncertainty. Enter Donald Trump, a figure who would redefine the very nature of transatlantic relations. He approached NATO not as a sacred alliance forged in the fires of the Cold War, but as a business deal, and one that he believed had gone terribly bad for the United States. He didn't just politely ask for more defense spending from member states, he flatly demanded it, often in very public and undiplomatic terms. He went as far as calling key allies delinquent in their financial obligations, and repeatedly threatening to simply walk away from the entire agreement if his demands weren't met. Trump's remarkably blunt and often abrasive approach sent shockwaves through the established order, leaving many European leaders stunned and uncertain. They were used to the nuanced language and careful diplomacy that had characterized NATO summits for decades. He even went so far as to suggest that the United States might not automatically come to the defense of countries that he felt weren't pulling their weight and hadn't paid up their fair share, according to his calculations. This wasn't just a negotiating tactic or some form of tough talk for the cameras. It genuinely rattled the foundations of the alliance, shaking it to its very core and forcing a period of intense self-reflection. Suddenly, NATO's future, once taken for granted, was splashed across newspaper headlines and became a constant topic on news broadcasts. It was no longer a quiet matter confined to backroom discussions among diplomats. Trump's relentless pressure forced every member state to confront the 2% of GDP defense spending target with a new sense of urgency. The already complex debate over defense spending quickly escalated into a full-blown political drama, both within individual nations and on the international stage. Critics, both at home and abroad, were quick to call his methods reckless and potentially destabilizing, but even his harshest critics had to concede that he had made it virtually impossible to ignore the long-standing issue of burden sharing within the alliance. The bill for decades of perceived underinvestment had finally come due, and the landlord, in the form of the U.S. president, was demanding immediate payment. Like it or not, the entire conversation surrounding NATO, its purpose, and its future had fundamentally changed. NATO members could no longer afford to treat defense spending as a purely optional exercise, something to be addressed when convenient. The alliance, after decades of relative stability, found itself standing at a critical crossroads, facing an uncertain future. Something fundamental within the structure of the alliance or the commitment of its members had to give in order to ensure its continued survival. With Trump's threats looming, NATO leaders faced tense, high-stakes meetings. European leaders had to justify billions in new military spending to their citizens. In places like Germany, this was a tough political sell, but global threats, like Russia's annexation of Crimea, made the risks of underfunding clear. The world was changing, and so was the alliance. Reluctantly, countries began to accept that more spending was necessary. It wasn't just about appeasing Trump, it was about adapting to new dangers. One by one, nations committed to the 2% target as a real goal. The alliance agreed, everyone would finally pay their share. NATO would stick together, but on more expensive terms. The era of free riding was over. So what does all this new spending buy? More advanced jet ships, tanks, and missile defenses, sure. But it's also about modernizing forces and making sure everyone's equipment works together. More money means better training, smoother logistics, and a truly unified military force. At the heart of it all is Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all. For that promise to mean anything, NATO needs real military muscle. If allies aren't ready, the security guarantee is just words on paper. This spending spree is about making Article 5 credible. European nations are showing they're serious partners, not just relying on the U.S. The message to adversaries: don't even think about it. The alliance is stronger, more united, and ready to act. The money turns promises into real power. Not everyone agrees this spending surge is a good thing. Supporters say a stronger NATO deters aggression and makes the alliance fairer and more sustainable. They argue that shared responsibility means a healthier, future-proof alliance. Critics worry the buildup could provoke Russia and spark a new arms race. They fear it could escalate tensions and make Europe less safe. There's also the question of priorities. Every dollar spent on defense is a dollar not spent on healthcare, climate, or education. Are we preparing for the right threats? Some say true security comes from investing in people, not just weapons. The debate is about more than budgets. It's about what kind of world we want. Is this the best path to peace, or just an expensive old habit? The answers aren't simple, but the stakes are huge. So after all this, where does this leave us in the grand scheme of things? NATO's spending spree marks a new chapter, a significant turning point in its history. More European, more self-reliant, and much more expensive. It could mean a stronger partnership with the U.S., a renewed commitment to shared security, but also raises big questions about the future direction of the alliance. Will a militarized Europe bring more security and stability, or will it create new risks and escalate tensions? The choices leaders make now will ultimately shape our future and the global order. A stronger NATO might make you feel safer and more protected, or perhaps more uneasy about the potential for conflict. There's no easy answer, no simple solution to these complex issues. As this new NATO takes shape and evolves, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of world are we actively building? Is military might truly the best guarantee of lasting peace? Or are there alternative paths we should be exploring? The debate is just beginning, a crucial conversation for our time. And it's one we all have a stake in, as global citizens.